So let's go over to start the slideshow. And what we're looking at today is about creating psychological safety and how this important area has come even more into focus with the introduction of legislation requiring that we create a psychologically safe environment in all of our organisations in Australia. So we'll be talking through what's happening so far in this and how organisations are going with this, which unfortunately is not all that great. Just a little bit about me. I love sport, played a fair bit of Australian rules, also did other things, cricket, baseball, basketball. I'm a Collingwood member, so I was very happy in the AFL with Collingwood winning the premiership last year, although we're struggling a bit this year. I've done some fun runs, so I like to keep fit. And then that larger group picture with me on the left-hand side, that's just an example of one of the leadership programs, the many leadership programs that I have run over the years. And it's come to be my purpose and my passion. What I've really noticed is that when there are really good, engaging leaders within a group, whatever sort of group, community, corporate, organisation, not-for-profit, when there's a really engaging leader, you have a happy group of people who then have a positive impact on others. When you don't have a great manager or leader, you have unhappy people who then tend to spread that feeling. So I'm trying to create a happier world one little bit at a time by creating more engaging, positive managers and leaders. So a little bit more about background on me. I became a manager in my late 20s. I was thrown into the job because I was doing well and getting lots of things done. I thought I was doing really, really well because I was achieving a fair bit of good results in terms of ticking off, getting projects done, hitting certain KPI targets. And I was figuring it out myself as I was going along, as most managers do. And I put in a lot of hard, long hours to make it all happen. Mm-hmm. At about 7 or 8 years into my management journey, I got some really good in-depth leadership training and some extended coaching, and it just changed my whole world and my whole approach. And I improved more in that 6 to 12 months than I had in the previous 7 or 8 years in terms of being an effective leader and getting insights around what it looked like to be engaging and effective as a leader. And then what I found is as I changed this learning and development, others started to ask me about what I was doing differently and to help them. And then I decided to make a career transition, which partly was also because I was traveling a lot with my management roles, looking after different parts of Australia and New Zealand and Asia Pacific for different organisations, some global. I was traveling a lot, so I decided I wanted to spend some more time with my kids, and I got out into doing leadership development and leadership coaching. So I've been through running leadership training for over 1,500 people, individually coaching over 300 managers, and I've really helped those managers to work less hours and have more balance, right? And hit their KPIs, get promoted and earn more, doing some of the things that Amelia was just talking about earlier with the boundaries. And engage and motivate their team as well, which overall increases their job satisfaction. And it doesn't mean they need to work longer hours. Okay? And this is all connected into the critical skills that we need to create a psychologically safe team. Because without knowing it then, the key elements that I was doing was putting in place an environment for a psychologically safe team. So let's keep going and have a look at this. And please feel free to jump in because I've been speaking with lots of people in the last 12 months around psychological safety, and it's a bit of a grey area at the moment. But let's have a look at what is psychological safety. So first of all, we can look at it in terms of being a shared belief held by the members of a group or a team that is a safe environment for interpersonal risk-taking. That means how we interact with each other. Okay? And what it means is that there's a real belief, a confidence that I can interact with the group and not feel like I'm going to be embarrassed or rejected or punished or have some consequence for the way that I interact or get involved or speak up. Okay. And it's also about ensuring that within that, people can truly be themselves, so that it's based on trust and respect. Okay. And so I don't have to put on a face and pretend to be somebody different when I come to work. I can actually truly be myself. Okay. Now, there's a bunch of these things that it's challenging to put in place. And there's often some questions that come around that, which we'll get to soon enough. We'll see what questions you have in just a moment. So another way to look at this in terms of defining elements of psychological safety are these 4 areas. Developed this model by Dr. Timothy Clark. So we can look at it in terms of this. First one is inclusion safety. So to feel that I am included, I am treated fairly, I am valued, and what I bring adds to our group. Okay? And I am recognised and acknowledged for that. All right. Then there's learner safety, which is about also being able to ask questions, what we might sometimes call dumb questions. It's also about being able to try something different or try something new. When we're all growing and doing something different, we're not going to be that good at it the first time we try something. Okay. And so learner safety is about being able to experiment a bit, try something, learn from mistakes, and feel like I am safe in that environment. Not that I am going to get punished or have this sort of work taken away from me or not get another opportunity to do something different because I wasn't perfect straight away. Contributor safety is around being safe and feeling able to contribute your ideas, my ideas, to be able to engage and raise my ideas without feeling like that I am going to be criticised, I'm going to be talked over, I'm going to be shot down. So really believing that people will listen to, not necessarily agree with, but listen to my ideas, and I feel safe to raise those. And then challenger safety goes a little bit further, where it's about challenging the ideas of others or challenging the way that it's always been done, feeling safe enough that I can raise this, speak up, express my thoughts that could be different from someone else's thoughts or different from what we've been doing, and feel that I can be heard. And again, it's not about whether we take on board and implement everything that I suggest. It's that I feel safe to raise that without any consequence. So let's just stop there for a moment and see what questions you've got around your understanding of psychological safety, or any grey areas, or any of the elements of those models that I've just put forward.
Yeah, I think this really resonates very well, Michael. What you have really enunciated here is, I think, a really good traits of a manager who actually, especially the first two, inclusion safety and contributor safety, really well. I have worked in different organizations, and I really feel that most of the times, if not all, of all these 4, contributor safety is where it basically gets hampered a lot for new folks, or who feel, their ideas get shrugged off. No, that's not how we do. So I think really having this sort of training for all managers across all organizations is very important, because they might actually be hampering, the new talent, which is new innovative ideas. So this is really resonates well.
Great, thank you. I'm glad that that's resonating, and you're exactly right. That we'll get to that in just a moment. That without realizing it, many managers are actually stopping themselves from being able to build these in a way that we need to. Sandeep, is there anything that you'd like to add or ask about at the moment?
No, I think it's very well summed up, and these are the challenges we face on in day to day. So no, it's very well articulated.
Great. Thank you. Good. So we've got now. I do need to say that this is an overall definition of working towards creating psychological safety. One of the things that we still aren't 100% sure on is how the legal side is going to interpret things. So because it's relatively new and there are no specific cases of going through looking at a specific situation where then people are not psychologically safe, it's still a little bit grey as to what that looks like from a legal perspective. And so we'll keep going forward though and see how this is playing out at the moment.
Yeah.
So
Michael, one thing I would like to, sorry, I would just like
Yeah.
to add on to this thing. It's about how the other person feels. It's not about what you can do. Like, definitely you might be doing the right thing, but it depends on the other person feeling that way. The other
Exactly.
person, yeah.
Yes, you are spot on, exactly right there. And so that's part of the real challenge what we're facing, because it's not about me as the manager or the organization saying I think I'm doing the right things. It's actually about how do the people feel in that group, in that team, in that organization. Very good point. Thank you. So it's now a legal requirement, as I said, and as we've just been talking about, it's much harder to really truly identify, because it's the interpretation and perception of the individuals, the people involved, as Sandeep has just said. So we're trying to essentially use the model at the moment that we have used over the last 20 or so years for implementing physical safety. And we're trying to apply that to psychological safety. Physical safety models are much easier to set up and see. Psychological safety is not something that we can easily see. It's something that we need to be able to understand from people expressing how they're feeling, which creates a challenge. But firstly, let's have a look at where we're at right at the moment. Okay, so we've got a situation where, if we look at the stats of what's happening here, we probably haven't got a great base record in what's happening with psychological safety. Burnout is rampant. In the latest Gallup research, they're saying that 69% of people are describing that at times, if not all of the time, they're feeling like they're burning out, they have burnt out, or they're on the road to burnout. Okay, and managers rate that higher. Stress levels are very high. They went up during COVID and they haven't come down. And Australia and New Zealand are in the top 5 stressed countries for people describing how they're feeling at work. Okay. Now, the contrast to that is high-performing employees, right, and high potential, the people you want to get into your organization and keep in your organization, they expect a psychologically supportive culture. They don't necessarily use these terms at the moment, but they expect and the opportunity to be able to feel safe, to have their say, to learn and grow, to grow through mistakes. So they expect that. Yet at the moment, what's happening is most organizations are still trying to get their head around what psychologically safe environment looks like. And they're looking at compliance rather than prevention, rather than truly creating an overall psychologically safe environment. Okay. So employees, and especially your high performing employees and high potential employees, they don't want you just to identify it's after happened. They want prevention and creating of this positive culture, this engaging culture. Okay. So what's been happening? Let's go through with looking at just a way we can describe this. If we say this is the picture of creating a psychologically safe workplace, and as you see in the points there, what's been happening at the moment so far is that there's been a heavy focus on compliance, and then a heavy focus on identifying what are psychological hazards. Now, these can help with the legal requirements, but they actually don't contribute all that much to creating a proactive, preventative, psychologically safe workplace. Okay. First of all, what starts to happen, and we're doing some of this, so it's got to expand, but we need to understand more within organisations. What does it truly mean to have a psychologically safe environment? All right. And many organisations are still trying to get their head around that and being able to communicate and explain that through their organisations. But then what's most important, and it's a big step that's really missing at the moment, and it has by far the biggest effect on creating a psychological safe workplace, is the managers and their training and their interactions. Because it's the interactions with the team and the managers have the biggest impact. But at the moment, most of them don't know how to create a psychologically safe workplace. And in fact, as Amaya mentioned earlier, without meaning to, they're doing things that is actually creating somewhat uncomfortable, perhaps unsafe environments. So let's have a little bit more of a look at what this means for an organisation, because there's many costs at many levels. So low levels of psychological safety have an effect on an organisation. Absenteeism is higher, so 43% more sick days, where it's low levels of psychological safety. What's called presenteeism these days, which is people are there in their roles, but they're not highly engaged or motivated. They're doing just what they need to, or maybe not even quite that much. So the loss of productivity is much higher in these groups and organisations. Overall, that can cost a lot of money. So over $6,000 per person, and this was several years ago, this study. Gallup says in their most recent study this year that low engagement costs about 20% of an employee's salary, right, across the year, and their lost productivity. And then unwanted turnover, which is higher, where there's lower psychological safety and low engagement, will cost you about 150% of the salary of that employee. And it's higher for managers, and it's higher if you've got a high-performing person that you really want it to stay. And then there's the extra costs around work cover, with there being more issues, more disputes, potentially more payouts, more time spent handling staff issues. And this is before we've even really seen many things kick in around people actually making claims on being psychologically unsafe. So it's got a positive side. If we get a psychologically safe environment, then we're going to be both happier, more satisfied, and more productive, and the organisation is going to be more effective and have less costs. And that was a study from South Australia. Now, the interesting thing here, again, is most managers don't really know about creating psychological safety. So they do what they think is the right things. Here are some of the things that most managers do. They jump in and protect the team from failure by stepping in to take over, fix the situation, fix their work, increase the quality of their work before it gets finalised or passed up to the next level. Seems like the right thing to do, maybe. Managers tend to tell people exactly what they need to do to complete the tasks. Usually they've been an expert in these tasks. They know what they need to do, so they want to give the specific detailed outlines, telling people exactly what to do. Managers want to try and create a happy, friendly team environment. And all of these things seem like they should be the right thing to do. Often managers find they're extremely busy responding to a whole bunch of stuff, requests, emails, putting out fires, making sure things get done. That's what they're supposed to do, isn't it? Make sure things get done. Well, actually, we need to stop doing that if we want to create a psychologically safe environment and a high-performing team, because even though they seem logically like the correct things to do, each of these is highly likely to create a version of a psychologically unsafe environment and leads to overwhelm and burnout, both within the team and especially even more for the managers. So let's just stop for a moment and check in. Have you seen these things? Have you done any of these things as a manager? Have you seen other managers in the organisations that you've worked in doing these types of things? I'll just stop sharing at the moment.
Yeah, it's I think it's pretty common in the management styles.
It is, isn't it? I
Yeah.
literally, I see it every single organisation that I've been involved with. Not every manager, but yeah, I see it everywhere. So you've experienced that too, Sandeep?
Yeah, I think it's common. Like you'll find either one or more of those elements in day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And most people don't recognise that it's actually being ineffective. What about you, Amaya? Are you there? You may have stepped away for a moment. That's right. We'll come back to it. So, is there any thoughts that you want to add or questions that you want to ask, Sandeep?
No, I'm just trying to absorb the information at the moment.
Okay. We'll keep going.
Sure.
So jump back to the slideshow. All right. So what's important here is to recognize that what can seem like the logical things to do that most managers try to do, and in fact often encouraged by their other senior managers around them to do, don't actually create a psychologically safe environment, and they don't create high-performing teams. All right. Now, why is this the case? Well, if we go through a couple of these, so the first one, if you jump in, right, to take over a situation where someone in your team is struggling a bit, and the managers tell me, oh, look, I noticed that Michael, he was getting a bit stressed, he was working long hours, he seemed to be struggling a bit with that particular project. So I stepped in to help just to make sure that he wasn't too stressed and that we would make sure we get a good job done and pass it on to the client or pass it up to senior management. But let's have a look at it from the other perspective. If you were given a project and it was challenging, but you wanted to work through it, and then your boss came and took part or all of it away and kind of finished it off for you, how would you feel? Well, most people describe that they feel like, yes, Sandeep, are you going to add to that?
Yeah, no. I'm getting your point.
So how would you feel if it was partially or fully taken away from you?
Yeah, I think what it leads to is the understanding of the full situation of the issue. Like some people thrive under challenging circumstances, some people succumb to the pressure. So I think as a manager, it's very critical for you to identify whether the person needs help or is it just he needs the time to basically get over the thing. So if you fail to identify whether the person is falling under pressure or whether the person is thriving, I think then you can make a wrong decision to basically, if he's thriving and you jump in and then you just basically spoil it for him.
Yes, that's part of it. The interesting thing is that even when people are struggling, if the managers take over, they still feel like the manager doesn't trust them, the manager doesn't believe in them. Now maybe they've dropped a bit of their own confidence. Was I capable of doing that job? I will never know now because it was taken away from me. And so that kind of interpretation is very strongly connected to whether you're feeling psychologically safe or not. Okay. So what the manager would need to do in that situation, as you said, is read the situation and then provide what the employee needs in order to complete the project, the task, while still feeling like the manager is there to believe in them, to support them.
Yeah, I think it's more about letting the individual complete the task than to basically complete the task for them. You
That's
provide the
right.
tools, and they need to use the tools and complete the task themselves instead of someone else completing it for them.
That's right. And the key
Yeah.
part is the interaction that happens between the manager and the team member. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with the second one. Managers feel like that I know what to do. If I tell them what to do, that'll make it easy for the team members. But how do you think most team members who get very specific details about exactly how to complete every little step of the task, they describe it as being micromanaged?
Yeah, micromanage. Yeah.
Yep. So micromanagement correlates to low engagement and feeling psychologically unsafe. I don't feel like I can do it my way. I don't feel like I can contribute. I don't feel like I can be myself. I just need to do what my manager tells me. And then another part of the psychologically safe environment is that we actually have open and honest discussions. So trying to create a happy, friendly team is a nice thing to work towards. It must be genuine and honest and respectful, not a pretend friendly, or not we can be friendly when we go out for drinks, but we can, treat each other very differently when we're at work. So these are all the things that most managers haven't really had an insight about in terms of how to create a psychological safe environment. They keep doing the things that logically seem right to you. And the last one is the same, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. If you're spending most of your time trying to get things done, that results in most team members feeling like that they're not, their manager is not truly concerned about what's happening for them because they don't get enough time with them. So what should we be doing instead? All right, so here are the 3 critical things to be doing to start in this process. So it's about focusing on creating a team environment that is based on trust, high level of trust and real personal engagement. We'll go through these in a little bit more detail, and you can jump in and ask questions as well. Then we need to make sure that the managers have the skills and the support to be at their best so they can create this psychologically safe environment. And they need to be able to consistently have meaningful one-on-one conversations. So let's look into each of these. So creating a team environment based on trust and real engagement. Okay. So trust needs to be the foundation of psychological safety. If we're not building trust, it's unlikely that we can create psychological safety. It's pretty much, it's impossible. Okay. Now, if you ask managers about what they're doing and their intentions, they're always trying to build trust. The challenge here is that all the research across multiple organizations, Gallup Leadership, IQ, Forbes, Neuro Leadership Institute, I could go on, say that the employees disagree. They say that managers are not doing a good job of building trust. And they say one of the key factors is that managers spend almost all of their time focusing on tasks and results. For example, when they have a discussion, the team members say, my manager asks me about what I've done, what I've still got to do, how I'm going with a task or a project. That's the update. There's very little check-in on me as a person, except for maybe when we're supposed to have our annual review. Okay. And most managers don't realize that these type of everyday interactions are the key ones that go towards building or breaking trust. The most common one that I see is a simple example is when managers say that they want to have a one-on-one meeting with their team members, and then they either cancel it, move it, or turn up late, or have to leave early, so it's rushed. And as soon as you've done that twice, you're breaking trust. Okay. Now, the managers say to me, oh, it was because something urgent came up and I just had to do that. And I say, yes, I can understand. What we need to look at, though, is from your team members' perspective, you have just said on 2 or 3 or 4 occasions, something else is more important than you. So my feeling as the team member is my manager thinks other stuff is more important than me. I'm not very important. My manager doesn't really care about me. That's the sort of flow on. And when people start thinking that the manager doesn't care, doesn't see me as important, then we're getting to be, we're breaking trust and psychological safety is low. Now, it's about making sure that managers need to understand and build the skills around how to create this trust. Vulnerability is a big one at the moment that people are really identifying. And we're talking about it, that most managers actually find it very uncomfortable to be vulnerable. And most senior managers also do not role model vulnerability. Same with expressing how you're feeling and talking about our feelings. Many managers have said to me that they don't want to have to talk about their feelings. And yet team members then tell me that when managers don't want to talk about feelings and don't want to talk to the team members about how they're feeling, right? Again, it makes them feel like that they're not interested in them. They don't care about how they're feeling. And values-based listening, we'll come to that in just a moment. Please feel free to jump in with any thoughts, any questions, anything that you'd like to ask at the moment.
All good, Michael, at the moment.
Great, thank you. So the interesting thing coming out of the Gallup research just this year is that what I will call poor managers are the root cause for low engagement and psychological injury. So over 70% of the causes of psychological injury are directly related to the manager of that person. Okay. So if we want to create a psychologically safe environment where we're preventing psychological injury and creating engagement and trust, then it's the biggest way that we can make a change is to develop and train our managers. So let's get on to that, ensuring the managers have the skills and the support to be at their very best. Okay. So we need some support for the managers to transform into being an effective leader who can create a psychologically safe environment. And that's not just sending them to, a workshop for 3 hours or a leadership training for a day or 2. It's ongoing support. Okay. So managers need to have the time to develop themselves and then to develop others, rather than prioritizing just focusing on getting stuff done, getting the results, talking about that. And we've already got talking about that earlier, prioritizing some time like today to do this and learn and grow and develop. I don't see that often enough, as I mentioned earlier. So managers need to be able to have proven leadership methods that are going to help them in these areas. Most managers, 99% of the managers that I talk to are left to figure these things out for themselves. Yes, they know they should delegate. Do they have a proven model that they know works, that they can use and then talk through with someone to see what they're doing well, what they need to improve on, how they can improve in the steps to be effective at delegation? No, most of them don't. Effective feedback is another really important one. I ask people, what does effective feedback look like? What's the definition of effective feedback? I get blank. Most people can't give me an answer. Okay. if you want to jump in and give me your thoughts, if you know that, or if you've been through some program, I'd love to hear it. And most managers don't know what that actually looks like, effective feedback.
Yeah, Michael, again, with this one, yes, there's definitely people do struggle with feedback, especially giving good feedback is not a problem. It's usually when you have to give feedback in relation to getting some people to improve on things. I think people do struggle with that. And yeah, I personally do struggle sometimes trying to uh, basically correlate an event to how it needs to be done and how it should be done, or how the person has performed. It's uh, always a sticky one because it might not be because of the ability of the person or the skill set of the person. It might be more how the person is feeling or how the things are happening around him or at home or anything. And that's where people kind of, it just puts you a bit in an awkward situation. How do you react to that situation?
Yes, exactly. And that's challenging. So to have a method to have that difficult conversation, or to give that constructive feedback, that you know that hundreds of other managers have used it and it is effective, and that you just need to learn and practice that process and you will become effective at it, that makes a big difference. And even with positive feedback, yes, you're right, Sandeep, people are much more comfortable at giving positive feedback. But then I throw out a question: do you know the difference between effective positive feedback and a compliment or an acknowledgement? Because they're different. And people kind of work it out, and most people need to stop and think about that. And most managers, for example, find that when they reflect on that, they're giving lots of compliments, like thank yous. They're not giving very much effective feedback, which is very specific. You can look at it in terms of effective feedback is that the person who receives the feedback knows exactly what behavior that they did that was good and how to repeat it, or they know the behavior that they did that is not up to standard and what they can do differently to improve next time. Just as the clear definition of effective feedback. And so they're just examples of a couple of things that managers will be much more effective if they have been provided with this information and the support to learn how to utilize these tools. Okay. So part of that becomes about getting some sort of help, accountability partner, some expert guidance. The way that I look at this is about developing your skills as a leader to create a high-performing team, to create a psychologically safe environment. So if you're looking to develop skills, it's the same as any other skills. If you were looking to learn how to become good at playing the guitar, or how to become good at tennis or golf, then you wouldn't just do a 3-hour workshop and expect yourself to be really good at playing the guitar, or do a day's tennis and expect to be able to go out the next weekend and perform in a tennis match and beat somebody else. You need to continually practice and get feedback, get some input from someone else who's got some expertise, and continue to improve along the way over a period of time. And that's exactly the same for leadership skills. So let's have a look at meaningful conversations, one of the critical elements of psychological safety. So they should include, so recognition of work, so effective, positive feedback. And we should be giving people at least 3 times, even better if it's 5 times more positive feedback compared to any constructive feedback. Okay. And people get more motivated and feel more psychologically safe the more positive feedback that they receive when it's delivered as part of that effective feedback model. Then the conversations are about building relationships and collaboration. So it's about the interaction with people, checking in, getting to understand how they're thinking, how they're feeling, giving them an opportunity to speak up, to understand about them and who they are and what's important to them, not just about the tasks that they're doing. Right? It's about making sure that people understand the goals and expectations, right, that they're jointly created with the manager. Okay? And there's ongoing discussions about what are these goals and what are the expectations, right, for the role, and that are important to the individual. And it's not about how long these conversations have to be. Sometimes they can just be 5 minutes or so. Okay. Sometimes they need to be an hour. But it's the quality and the consistency that's important. So quality in terms of truly feeling like you're connecting. There's an openness that they're sharing genuinely, and consistency that they happen on a regular basis. Not if they're setting to regular intervals, that's great. If they're not, that's still okay, as long as it happens consistently and not, once every 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It's got to be more often than that. Okay. And the manager, as part of these conversations, shows that they understand the strengths, the interest, and what good performance looks like for the individual. Right. So you're talking about those things, and in two-way conversation. In fact, through all of this, it works better if the team member is actually talking more often than the manager. Right? And using what we call values-based listening, so to ensure people feel heard. So one of the critical elements about meaningful conversations is that people feel heard. And values-based listening is about listening for what's truly important to that person. So it's about tuning in to what stands out as being something that's really important in their life, not just at work, but in their life. Okay. And usually there's some feelings that go with that connect into what we call values, because they're around the things that are most important to them. What we do, tasks, and even results, they sit behind this in terms of importance for people feeling heard and therefore feeling psychologically safe. So this all takes a bit of focus and effort. It's not natural, especially at work, for most people to have these types of conversations. So it's something we need to think about being able to create. Again, questions or thoughts around this so far?
No, Michael, yeah, no, completely correlate with this one-to-one conversations. We kind of implemented this on a monthly basis. Another month comes very quick, but I think it really that one-to-one discussions and conversations really, get you to understand where people are or what they're thinking, what's happening.
Yeah.
So definitely they do add a lot of value.
Great.
To it.
Great.
Yeah.
And fantastic to hear that you're doing that, because again, it's not something I hear often enough. And when I do hear that people are having one-on-one meetings, most of the time it's talking about what work they're doing or trying to do, rather than all of these things.
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing to note here is that just by having these, so for example, once a month, that's really good. But if that's the only time you're showing that you're checking in with your team member, it doesn't cancel out the other interactions that you're having for the rest of the month. So there's going to be also a consistency and alignment with the way that you're interacting across all of the interactions. You can't just have a nice conversation once a month and then, be pressuring and pushy and driving, people to get things done for the rest of the month.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. We just do that as a more disciplined approach, and kind of do it at least once a month. But we do have informal check-ins. Try to check in at least once a week with all the team members, and it also depends upon the size of the team.
Yes.
If you have a small team or a big team, it all depends upon that.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and a whole bunch of factors that make that more complex. You're exactly right.
Yeah, it does.
Yes, like flexible working and hybrid teams and all those kind of things.
It's I think managers' roles are becoming more, managing people than managing work these days. So
yeah, it is exactly, and that's what this is all about. We need to be able to make sure that managers have the time to be looking after and managing their people. Otherwise, they just don't have enough bandwidth and enough mind space to be able to create a psychologically safe environment. So just a little bit of research there from Gallup. Only 4 in 10 people in the last week say that they received any recognition or praise.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's even lower in the organisations that I've worked with. So it's just something to think about this going forward. It sounds like May and Sundip, you're already doing a variety of this stuff, so that's great to hear. Often I get people who haven't done any of these things and they try and do it themselves, but unfortunately most of them don't actually do it themselves.
Yep.
So it's about thinking about if we're not putting these things in place, what is that going to cost to the organisation, or what is it worth to you to actually turn it around and create a psychologically safe environment so you can be more like an employer of choice and have high-performing, highly engaged teams. And so one of the options to think about is a program that I have. So I'll just quickly go through this, jump in if you want to ask any questions. But the key thing that I do here with this program, the way that I've created it, is that people get to work through the program and develop their skills. And I keep working with them until they're transforming and growing. It's not like most other things where it's just a day training here and there or some online workshops. They give you the content and they sort of wish you luck. This is in a program that we work with you as you're going along. Okay. So it includes online video-based training to be able to help you to put in place all of these things and with all the tools and methodologies that I'm talking about, and worksheets about what you're doing so you can get feedback from me. It includes some one-on-one coaching, and it includes 12 months worth of group coaching. And that's where you see is the great opportunity for leaders to really get this development of their skills and get feedback and keep improving. Okay, because you get that support across 12 months. And you can work with the group and myself privately to get support and help. And many people really like the fact that they hear from others who are going through similar sort of things. So you get to try it for risk-free. As I said, it's a done-with-you implementation, and it's about accelerating your leadership development and career progression. If you can devote about 2 hours a week, you can be at your very best in 90 days. So you can book in a complimentary coaching session with me to get it started. I believe this is something that's very different, because what other training course allows you to try it and then see if it works for you or not, and to be supported for 12 months for about the same cost that you can go to a 2-day program for. Here's a couple of my clients. One, Alex, who's gone through several promotions, is now a general manager at Belgravia. I'll leave you to read some of that. And then Jude, a really interesting one. I've worked with many people who have done MBAs and a high level of education, And what they always say, something similar to here to Jude, is that being able to take some of that learning and put it into the specifics and the subtle things that make a big difference to the engagement of the team members is what they get the most out of the coaching program. But now that's time for us to wrap up the content that I've got and see what questions you've got about psychological safety, about leadership development, anything else that you'd like to ask about. Happy to help in any way that I can.
I think, Michael, I think at the moment we are in a stage of we're putting more administrative controls in place, like policies and procedures, than actually really working on making an impact. And I think that's where most of the organizations are sitting at the moment, because I think it's in very early stages of this has become a law.
Yeah.
So I think businesses are still thinking through this, how to do it, how to implement it, and everything. So that was a really good insight into what needs to be done at a managerial level, and pretty much everyone is like, manager in one sense or another. You're managing people or you're working with people.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important.
Great,
yeah,
thank you.
Definitely a good insight into everything that's involved.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that feedback, and it's great. It's even interesting to hear that what you've described is what I put in the early slides, where it's still around that definition of compliance and psychological safety and putting those processes in place. That what we will all find at some point coming through that is that we need to move to the next stage, which is about what do we actually need to do, especially with our managers, in order to create this environment rather than just have the documentation and the compliance organized.
Yeah, definitely. And, the companies can have whatever policies and procedures, but it depends upon those individual managers and senior managers and everything, how much they believe in that and how much they implement it to actually create an impact at the ground level.
That's right. Exactly. Yes. How much they believe in it and how much they want to create an impact. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time, Sandeep and Amaya. And I know that there's a bunch of other people who signed up because they wanted to get the recording. So for those people, you've got some contact details here on the screen now. You can reach out to me with your questions as well. Anything else that anyone would like to share just before we finish up?
All good, Michael. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Really nice to see you here on the masterclass webinar. Have a great day, and hopefully our paths will cross again at some stage soon.
No problems. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.